if you're in a long-term relationship, I think you know the feeling we're talking about. It's that silent drift.
It's not some big dramatic fight.
No, not at all. It's this slow, almost invisible slide where the intimacy that used to feel so easy just sort of
And
evaporates.
suddenly the person you share a life with feels more like a roommate.
Exactly. A roommate or a co-parent. It's this incredibly lonely feeling, even when you're technically together all the time.
And that's where people start to think, something is fundamentally broken.
Yeah.
But the sources we looked at, they really paint a very different picture.
What's the mission for this deep dive then?
Our mission today is to go way beyond just diagnosing the problem. We're going to distill the actual practical steps for how to rebuild and sustain that closeness. We're viewing this distance not as a failure, but as a real opportunity.
Okay, let's get into this because I think for a lot of people, when you say the word intimacy, their mind just immediately goes to one
The
thing.
physical, right.
To the physical. But that's a myth. And it kind of sabotages the whole effort to reconnect. So what did our sources say about what intimacy really is?
Well, they show that real intimacy is multidimensional. If you only chase the physical, you miss the entire architecture that holds a relationship together. The sources break it down into 3 core dimensions.
Okay, give us the 3.
So the first is emotional intimacy. This is all about being able to share your fears, your hopes, your deepest thoughts without that fear of being judged.
It's feeling safe enough to be vulnerable.
Exactly. Knowing your partner will hold that with care.
And then there's the second one, which, as we said, is often mistaken for the whole picture.
Physical intimacy.
Right. And it's so important to understand this goes way beyond just sex.
Oh, absolutely. It's the small gestures. Holding hands, a hug, just sitting close together on the couch.
These little things communicate safety and warmth on a really primal level.
And then there's the third one, mental or intellectual intimacy. This one gets overlooked a lot.
This is being on the same wavelength,
Oh,
right?
that's it. Sharing ideas, dreams, talking about what's going on in the world. It's about stimulating each other's minds.
Yeah.
When you see all 3, you realize connection is about trust and presence, not just, desire.
So if those are the 3 pillars, what is it about modern life that makes them all start to crumble at the same time? It really doesn't feel like a conscious choice.
It's almost never a conscious choice. The research points to one main culprit, the complete domination of our attention by routine and stress.
Work, money, kids.
Right. The sheer logistics of life just eat up all the available mental energy. So what you have is this slow accumulation of small moments of just absence. And that starves the relationship.
And this is where the research got really technical and frankly surprising to me. It's not just that stress makes you tired, it actually changes how your brain functions.
Exactly right. When your cortisol levels are constantly high, the
A
amygdala,
brain's threat detection center.
yes, it becomes hyperactive. So when you get home stressed
Yeah.
and your partner tries to share something, your brain might actually perceive it as another threat or another demand.
Instead of an invitation to connect.
Right. So the key insight here is that disconnection is often a neurological survival mechanism. It's not a malicious choice.
That just reframes the whole problem. So what's the personal cost of living in that state of intimate starvation?
It's profound. It goes way beyond just feeling dissatisfied in your relationship. Emotionally, it leads to deep loneliness, insecurity,
Frustration.
a lot of frustration. But physically, that lack of connection can actually increase inflammation and cortisol, which leads to sleep problems, a weaker immune response. It really wears you down.
And a crucial point the source has made is that partners feel this loss in very different ways.
That is absolutely vital to understand. People have different styles. One person might internalize everything and withdraw. The other might get more expressive.
More critical or maybe have emotional outbursts.
Exactly. And recognizing that each of you is approaching this distance differently is the only way to move forward with compassion instead of just more conflict.
Which brings us perfectly to our next segment, that first step to bridge the gap. Communication. But it has to be honest and safe, not an attack.
Communication is everything.
Yeah.
But just saying we need to talk can be the start of another fight. We need specific tactical changes in how we talk.
Okay, what's tactic number 1?
Shift from blame to experience.
So you're talking about getting away from those killer phrases like you never or you always.
Precisely. Those phrases immediately put the other person on the defensive. It triggers that amygdala response we just talked
So
about.
instead of you never spend time with me, you say what?
You master the I statement, like, I feel lonely when we don't set aside time together without our phones. It comes from a place of vulnerability, not accusation.
Okay, let me challenge that for a second because I think a lot of listeners will relate to this. I say, I feel lonely. And my partner says, what are you talking about? We just watched 3 hours of TV together. How do you handle that defensiveness?
That's a perfect example, and it's why the second tactic, active listening, is so critical. You can't argue with someone's feeling.
But you can argue with their facts.
Exactly. When you hit that wall of defensiveness, you have to slow everything down and just be fully present.
So what does that look like? What's the difference between bad listening and, real validation?
Bad listening is, I heard you, but you're wrong. Or, I had a long day too. Active validation is listening without interrupting and then reflecting back what you heard.
So, it sounds like you've been feeling really overlooked lately.
And that feeling is completely valid. Tell me more about that. You're validating the feeling, not debating the facts. Sometimes just being truly heard is more important than finding a fix.
That reframes the goal from solving a problem to just acknowledging an experience. That's huge.
It is. And the final piece of this is expressing your own needs and fears safely.
This is where the vulnerability comes back in.
It's a superpower. You have to be really clear and tangible. Not just, I need more affection, but I would love it if we could hold hands for just 5 minutes before we fall asleep.
And the sources say you have to follow that up with a collaborative question, right?
Yes, absolutely. Don't just drop the need and run. Invite them in. Ask, how can we support each other to feel more connected? It turns a complaint into a team project.
Okay, so communication opens the door. Now we get into cultivating that closeness with real intention. And this isn't an overnight fix, it's about patience.
Intentionality is the key word. And when it comes to emotional closeness, the big insight from the research is consistency over grandeur.
So forget the big fancy vacation once a year.
It's the small, regular gestures that matter more. We have to reintroduce rituals into the relationship.
Okay, define the difference between a routine and a ritual. Brushing your teeth is a routine.
A routine is transactional. A ritual is devotional. It's a moment you set aside purely for connection, like the 5-minute rule. You get home, put your phones away, and for 5 minutes, you just share one high and one low from your day. That's a ritual.
Or a weekly date night, or even just a 2-minute hug before you turn out the lights.
Yes, they become these small, reliable anchors of presence in a chaotic week.
And all of this requires that vulnerability we keep coming back to.
It does. Because vulnerability is what builds trust. It means saying, I'm really struggling with work stress, or even, I messed up today. That invites empathy instead of judgment.
Let's shift to the physical side of this, because that's often the first thing to go. Let's talk about the actual physiological power of non-sexual touch.
Right. This is where it gets really biological. Touch communicates care in a way words just can't. It directly calms our nervous system.
We're talking about hormones here.
We're talking about oxytocin, the bonding hormone.
Mhm.
It's the direct antidote to cortisol, the stress hormone.
So what's the minimum dose for that to work?
The research pointed out that even a dedicated 20-second hug can significantly lower your heart rate and signal safety to your brain.
20 seconds? That's longer than a normal hug.
It is. But that's what it takes to get the biological benefit. And simple things, like holding hands or a touch on the shoulder, all reinforce that same feeling of safety.
Okay, but if physical touch has been gone for a long time, trying to reintroduce it can feel really awkward, or even high pressure.
It has to be gradual. You can't go from 0 to 100.
So what's step one?
Start small with low commitment touches. Hand on their back as you pass in the kitchen, sitting a little closer on the sofa. And you have to be so attuned to their nonverbal cues. If they tense up, you have to respect that.
So how do you make sure the touch feels meaningful, not just mechanical?
You combine the emotional and the physical. Offer a comforting touch while you're having a heartfelt conversation. Hold their hand while you're talking about something stressful.
So the touch reinforces the emotional connection that's happening.
Exactly. The touch says, I see you and I am here with you.
Rebuilding all of this is a huge amount of work. But intimacy isn't a destination, right? You can't just get to a good place and then stop. How do you keep from drifting apart again 6 months later?
You have to accept that it's an ongoing process. Those rituals we talked about, the daily check-ins, the physical touch, they have to become non-negotiable habits.
They're like relationship maintenance.
They are. They don't have to take hours, but they have to be consistent. They're the anchors.
The sources also talked about embracing change, which sounds a little counterintuitive when you're trying to build stability.
But relationships are living things. They evolve. What you needed for connection 5 years ago might not be what you need today, especially after big life changes like having kids.
So you have to be willing to reevaluate.
Periodically, you have to ask, are these habits still working for us? And you have to celebrate the thrill wins along the way. The shared laugh, the courageous conversation, that reinforces the positive momentum.
Now, we have to talk about a tough reality. Sometimes, even with the best intentions, couples are just stuck.
The old hurts are too big, and they can't bridge that gap on their own.
And this is where professional guidance comes in. The sources were very clear this needs to be reframed.
It absolutely does. Seeking therapy or coaching is not a sign of failure. It is a profoundly courageous act of love for your relationship. It says, this is important enough to invest in.
So how does a professional actually help? What do they do that a couple can't do themselves?
They're a pattern interrupter and an objective translator. They create a safe, neutral space where you could explore these issues without bias.
So when one person says, you never listen, the therapist can help the other person hear, I feel unheard.
Precisely. They help you get out of the content of the fight and see the underlying pattern. They give you the tools to have those difficult conversations in a way that actually leads to understanding, not more distance.
And the sources noted that support isn't always about going in as a couple.
That's right. Sometimes individual support is what's needed first. You might need to work on your own self-awareness or attachment style. Often, the most effective path is a combination of individual growth feeding into the joint sessions.
This whole deep dive really reinforces that intimacy isn't one thing. It's a dance of trust and presence and understanding.
And it's nurtured by small, intentional acts. It's built on that foundation of safe communication. The amazing thing is that it absolutely can be restored. That distance you might be feeling isn't the end. It's really just an invitation to reconnect.
And that brings us to our final thought for you. This whole process is built moment by moment. It's about choices and intention. So knowing all of this, ask yourself, what is one small act of presence, honesty, or kindness you can offer in the next 24 hours to begin deepening your bond? Connection isn't something you find, it's something you build.